Hello and welcome to our main story tonight. Tonight we talk about something that each and every one of us feels, and we feel very deeply inside. And if we don't do it every day, we'll probably end up complaining about it in the next few days. Some people have even made it a profession. They write about it, talk about it, vlog about it, and even spend the entire day doing that thing. By now, you may have guessed it, what our story is about. Our story is about sex. No, it's not. It's about hunger. It has been with us since the beginning of time. Or as patriarchy would like to call, since the time Eve ate that apple and ruined everything for all. But things are a bit more serious, because as of 2018, there were 820 million people who were hungry daily, each and every single day. This is according to the Food and Agriculture Organization's 2019 report called the State of Food and Security and Nutrition in the World. It means that 11.7% of the world's population was hungry daily. If this was a country, it would have 82 crore people and would only be behind China and India. The report goes on to say that around 2 billion people face some kind of food insecurity. Means these people are without reliable access to nutritious and affordable food.
For decades, the number of hungry people had been declining. This isn't true anymore. Today, achieving the zero hunger goal by 2030 is becoming more challenging.
But things get a bit more dark from here. There were 135 million people who are facing acute hunger, or what we call as famine, a situation when people would go without food for days and days. And this is according to the 2020 Global Report on Food Crisis. And this number is about to get to double to about 265 million people. This is according to the World Food Programme, because the novel coronavirus, this guy right here, is driving up the numbers. These 135 million people reside in about 55 countries, which include the likes of Yemen, Afghanistan, Venezuela, and many others. And these countries face with an unimaginable choice of saving people from hunger or have them die from the coronavirus. Nobody should get this choice. The only choice one should have is Netflix or Amazon Prime, and neither of them would get you killed. Now you would be thinking, why am I throwing a bunch of data at you? Why does it bother us? Is India affected by it? So there's good news and bad news. The good news is that these 135 million people reside in about 55 countries and we are not one of them. But the bad news is that the novel coronavirus pandemic is going to drive up these numbers and we don't know which countries will be part of it.
I was the emergency coordinator in Sierra Leone when Ebola broke. And we thought that this was the worstest outbreak of a virus. But Ebola doesn't come close to what we're going to see with COVID-19.
But India must be on guard and we must prepare ourselves. Because despite the fact that India has done pretty well economically in the past 2 decades, we still had 194.4 million people that were undernourished as of 2018. And this is according to the same 2019 report from the Food and Agriculture Organization, which I talked about earlier.
Today, over 2 billion people do not have regular access to safe, nutritious and sufficient food, a problem that affects people not only in low and middle income countries, but also in high income countries.
Now the Global Hunger Index, which ranks different countries on the basis of nutrition and hunger, ranked India not 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. We were ranked 102 out of 117 countries in 2019. If this would have been a cricket match, it would have been a well-deserved century. Unfortunately, it is not. Now the Hunger Index talks about different indicators, and one of them is child wasting. Now you would use this term wasting for your friend at a party. Unfortunately, UNICEF would quietly disagree with me and say that child wasting in reality means that the weight of a child is too low for its height and a strong predictor of death among children under the age of 5. And in India, this number was at 20.8%, a staggering 20.8%, and it was the highest for any country for which data was available according to the Global Hunger Index of 2019.
With a score of 30.3, India suffers from a level of hunger that is categorized as serious. The 4 indicators for the index are undernourishment, child stunting, child wasting, and child mortality.
According to the United Nations, around 49 million people could be pushed into extreme poverty just this year because of the pandemic. The World Bank says that any person earning less than US dollars 1.90 per day faces extreme poverty. The United Nations says that this is not because we don't have enough food grains, but because our food supply systems are failing. The International Monetary Fund's chief economist Geeta Gopinath said that the current economic crisis is unlike anything the world has seen before. And when you heard her name, Geeta Gopinath, you must be wondering, is she an Indian? Because that's the first thing that comes to a person's mind in India. Oh yes, she's an Indian American, for your information.
What we are seeing is that in the first half of this year, when the lockdowns was more severe, the impact on economies was worse than we had anticipated in April. So that was one factor. The second factor is that because there is still no medical solution to this crisis, we are expecting much more persistent social distancing into the second half of this year. So the combination will then have an impact for growth potential for economies too.
The IMF said in June that the world economy would contract by 4.9% this year. Back in April, they said it would contract by 3%. Now, just in a span of 2 months, they have changed their stance. Now, this organization predicts things well in advance. But because of the novel coronavirus pandemic, everything has become very, very uncertain.
And if you take emerging markets and you exclude China, that downward revision is actually bigger for emerging markets as compared to advanced economies. So in April, it was indeed the case that was reversed. But that was because the health crisis hadn't spread as severely to emerging markets. But now it is there. And in fact, the pandemic has shifted to Latin America, and many emerging markets are seeing rising cases.
Now there's a link between economic growth and efforts to tackle hunger and malnutrition. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization, poor economic performance from many countries after the 2008-9 financial crisis was among the main reasons that undermined efforts to tackle hunger and malnutrition. The IMF said that the Indian economy is set to contract by 4.5% this year. According to the 2018 report by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, there were 19.59 crore people in India who were undernourished. And according to the 2019 report, there were 19.4 crore people who were undernourished. So during this span of time, we could only bring down the number of undernourished people in India by 15 lakh. And this time our economy was growing pretty well, because in 2018 we were growing by 6.1% and in 2019 we were growing by 4.2%. So India is facing a big challenge now when our economy is set to really contract a lot and the number of undernourished people in India could really rise. Dominic Beaujean, the Director of Emergencies at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, has said that global leaders are stressing that the pandemic could cause more lives in hunger than those actually infected by the virus.
This year, Global Report on Food Crisis makes it clear that there are 135 million people in acute food insecurity. It's clear that COVID-19 pandemic will impact those most vulnerable people.
According to an April report by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, battling hunger must be at the center of any economic stimulus package which countries are bringing out to counter the effects of the pandemic. The agency itself is seeking $350 million to scale up activities to fight off hunger because incomes are falling and food prices are rising.
There will be a direct impact on health and nutrition, but it will also impact food availability and access to food. It will be more difficult for people to produce because the supply chain of agricultural inputs will be more difficult because of some of the containment measures that are being taken by the countries.
India has announced a big stimulus package to boost economic growth, and under it, 1.75 lakh crore rupees have been placed under the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana. The government has said that around 31,000 crore rupees has already been deposited in the bank accounts of 20 crore poor families. That comes to around 1,600 rupees per bank account. The government has also said that around 18,000 crore rupees have been put under the bank accounts of 9 crore farmers. This comes to around roughly 2,000 rupees per bank account. The government has also said that the Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana would be extended till November, under which around 80 crore people would be getting the benefit of 5 kg of free food grains.
The world economy has come to a standstill, and that is having an effect on every citizen every person on this planet today. People are not working. They're compelled to the lockdown because of the spread of COVID-19.
The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations says that there are several ways to tackle food emergencies, which include cash and in-kind transfers, food distribution programs like food stamps, and meals at school, like the ones we have over here called midday meal systems. The United Nations agency says that the cash-based transfers help not just the individual but also the community as a whole, because cash gives them the choice to consume what they want, and by pumping that money into their local economies, they help boost market activity. And when the cash-based transfers are done electronically, this also helps prevent misuse of funds.
This is a health crisis, not a food crisis. But if governments start basically, as I mentioned, closing the faucets on exports, then this health crisis will become a food crisis.
We need to put more money in the hands of people so that the consistent work India has been doing over the years to battle hunger and poverty does not go to waste. And in the words of Captain America, we need to do this together.
How are you guys planning on beating that? Together.